Well, with Oliver Farry. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
We're going to be talking a lot about what's happening with the French government. President Hollande, very unpopular himself, and there's a new setback now for his government.
That's right. After heavy defeats in the municipal and European elections earlier this year, the ruling Socialists have now lost control of the Senate, which they won for the first time 3 years ago. Now, the right-leaning Le Figaro says, its headline says, it's one defeat more for the left, and it asks what can the Socialist Party expect next year, because there are two elections coming, the departmental elections and also the regional ones, and it says, well, it can expect nothing more than two more catastrophes, and the regional elections will end up turning the electoral map of France blue.
The colour of the right-leaning UMP party.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, Le Figaro does point out that from time immemorial, ruling parties tend to lose midterm elections, but it says that nobody has really lost this much. It also has a warning for France's right-wing parties. It says that don't get carried away here. Just because you're winning, it says they would be wrong to think that these victories are an endorsement of them. It is only really because not because the UMP symbolises hope, but because the Socialist Party in 29 months in power have just shown how incompetent they are. And they say that the reversal for François Hollande is also a clarification. The UMP's victory sounds the death knell for a number of his proposed reforms, including one of his campaign promises in 2012, which was to introduce the vote for foreigners, and that is now dead and buried, and Le Figaro says perhaps to the relief of the president himself.
Well, over on the left wing of the press, they're blaming François Hollande and his Prime Minister Manuel Valls for this latest electoral defeat.
That's right. The left-wing L'Humanité, which is associated with the French Communist Party, talks of a new smack in the face for the government. It accuses the President and the Prime Minister of having offered, quote, the Senate to the right wing on a plate. Now, that being a play on words on plateau, which is the term for the presidency of the Senate, which they have lost. The newspaper says that the government is paying for the poor effects in May's local elections, which have a knock-on effect on this. The reason being is that the senatorial elections are not elected by popular suffrage in France, but they're elected by councillors. Now, a number of reforms, L'Humanité says, have alienated councillors, such as redrawing constituency borders, changes to the school year, which have really taken a toll on local finances, and also a drop in central government allocations to councils. Now, these all say they have brought the left to a standstill. That's what the free sheet 20 Minutes says. But it does, however, remind us that it's not going to change an awful lot, because the lower house, the National Assembly, which is still controlled by the government, ultimately has the final say on things.
It's the more powerful house, that's true. We have been talking a lot about the mainstream right, centre-right and centre-left parties here, but a big headline that we're taking from this is the National Front, the far-right party, now entering the Senate for the first time. This is historic.
That's right. It's got 2 seats, both from the south of France, and candidates who, as Le Parisien says, appealed beyond their own camp, because they didn't actually have enough grand electors who are ultimately the people that vote for the senators. They didn't have enough to actually win 1 seat, so they had to appeal to other parties. And the Le Parisien says that this crossing of party lines is a sign of the successful sanitisation campaign that has been launched by Marine Le Pen over recent years. The centre-left Le Monde on its website talks of a new barrier being breached in the job of normalising the National Front.
Yes, because this party was a real pariah a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it still is in most parts, but there are obviously more and more French people who are comfortable voting for them. One of those senators, Stéphane Ravier, says as much himself. He says that we're back in the National Assembly. We've finally got to the Senate. Now there's only one door that needs to be pushed: the Élysée Palace.
Some voices there feeling that they aren't being heard enough, it would seem. Well, speaking of unpopular changes or reforms, the government is planning another one. What's it going to be this time?
Well, the papers are talking of attempts to cut back on parental leave, which is quite a big thing in France, to try and tackle the social security deficit. Now, the Catholic daily, the La Croix, says that the move threatens to stir things up and make people angry. It notes that paternal leave is basically one of the levers that allows France to have a birth rate that is higher than most of its European neighbours. Now, the measure will reduce maternal leave from quite a generous 3 years per child.
Maximum,
yes. To 18 months. So the government says, now the government is also pointing out, well, there's an upside here. Men can actually have paternal leave for 18 months as well. So maybe that'll encourage fathers to take care of their children more. Now, the family groups are saying this is a pretty much pretext because only 4% of men actually take paternal leave anyway. And parental leave, they say, is a lifesaver for lower income mothers. Something like 57% say that their working hours and their salaries mean that they cannot afford to work while their children are young. And Libération also has an interview with Nathalie Loiseau, who's the director of the elite National School for Administration. She says that equality of the sexes is still some way off in France. She says that the only way of telling men to allow women to have their places by telling them, well, you're going to gain as well, by us improving the economy. She also points out that the imbalance in management, 80% men and 20% in managerial positions in France, and which suggests that, quote, men are not exactly an endangered species like the giant panda.
Yes, perhaps quite a long way to go down the road to full equality. Yep. Thanks very much.
You're
Oliver Farry back in a couple of hours' time with a look through the international press for us as well. For now, though, we're going to find out what's making a buzz online in web news.